So being able to say, okay, if I, pull those levers, spend that amount of money on that network, if I send that amount of email to these people, these are the results that I can bring to the company.
Welcome to Velocitize Talks. I'm Andy North, and today my guest is Jonathan Nyst.
Hey, Andy, thank you so much for having me. Super happy to be here.
Tell us about BigPay and how it stands apart in the marketplace.
I was working for BigPay up until the end of 2021, and then I made the life decision to go back to Brussels, where I work for another FinTech company in the same sort of position. But obviously, BigPay has been, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, professional experience in my career. And so I joined them in January 2018, which is exactly when we launched to public as well. And I think, you have to understand the landscape in Southeast Asia. And when we launched, what was happening in terms of payments is there were lots of e-wallets. And so people had different apps. And so based on where you were going, you had to scan a QR code using your app to pay. What we came up with is a more traditional, say, European or at least Occidental model of neobanks. So we came up with an app and a card that you could use anywhere in the world, just like any sort of credit to debit card. And so the good thing is that, we're unique in the market, which is always good. So unique value proposition. Not the bad thing, but the challenge was that we needed to educate people around what we were, what we stand for, what people could use it for. And so we had to do a lot of education, a lot of work on branding, a lot of work on really helping people understand and see the value of BigPay in the daily life. But obviously, it's been a huge success, like millions of customers afterwards in a couple of markets. We've proven that the model can work in Southeast Asia as well, which is, obviously more challenging than potentially in Europe or even in the US, but really, really fulfilling in terms of achievement.
Talk about some of the unique opportunities and challenges with FinTech marketing and some of the marketing tactics that you would recommend for perhaps agencies or brands that might be getting into it now.
I think there are always two sort of marketing tactics that I like to recommend or talk about when it comes to FinTech marketing. The first one is creating a referral campaign. So your goal, especially when you're a new startup or a new FinTech company, is always to get as many users as possible, as quickly as possible. And so what you're trying to do is really to find a first niche or first gang of users who are going to adopt you, really, really test you, really use you a lot. And so you want to sort of engage them and reward them for being advocate of the brand. And so what you need to do is really figure out your cost per acquisition. And then from that cost per acquisition, work out a referral mechanism that is beneficial for you. And so I'll give you an example. For us at BigPay, worked out our cost per acquisition very, very early on, or at least what our target cost for acquisition was going to be like. And then what we did is we said for every existing user that refers someone to BigPay using their unique referral code, when the other person, the referee, signs up and activates their card, so this is a really key element that I'm going to explain just after this, but when that person activates the card, they receive 10 ringgit and the referrer gets 10 ringgit. And so for the referrer, you can do it as many times as possible. And so, what we saw is that some people and some of the really core engaged audience that we got in the beginning started pushing BigPay to their friends, started pushing BigPay to the audiences because they were key opinion leaders in very, very niche markets and stuff like that. And so, it was basically them doing a lot of the marketing work and a lot of the growth and acquisition work for us, which was really, really good and really, really rewarding. What I was saying earlier is that, for us as a company, as a new FinTech company, new user acquisition was the really, really key metrics that we needed to work on. And so that was probably one of the things that we were going to be judged on by our investors and our board and all these things. And so I think a second sort of FinTech marketing tactic that I always like to talk about is really making the most out of Paydays. And so, we know and we knew at BigPay, for instance, that when people got their salary towards the end of the month, we always saw spikes in payments, but also in international bank transfers. And so being able to craft your marketing calendar during the month so that when people get their money in, you're top of mind, and they've been waiting for a few days to actually use you was really, really key, and was really, really important to our growth. And so that's also something that vastly underrated, but super, super powerful and can really make or break your metrics on a monthly basis.
You actually recently wrote an article about the importance of having cross-functional teams organized around a customer's challenges rather than functional teams. Why is that so important, and what does it solve for?
Yeah, I think that's something that we're seeing more and more. And so I'll take the example of Wise, formerly known as TransferWise. They've been communicating a lot more around how they're organized internally in mini startups as part of a bigger scale ups. And so as mini startups, they take customer issues or like customer pain points, let's say, and then they put cross-functional team together. So I'll take an example. For instance, if your goal is to increase the conversion from people downloading the app all the way to the point where people finish signing up, you can see this problem from a multiple viewpoints. So from a marketing standpoint, you can say, okay, I'm going to refine my targeting in order to make sure that the people that start the journey are people really, really interested. So I'm going to play around with the messaging to make sure I target the right people at the right time and all these things. So marketing plays a role. But then once people are in the flow, right, it's more of a product and design experience. And so what you can do from a product standpoint is really analyze where people are stopping, what are the pain points within the sign-up journey, and then think of how you can sort of simplify the user journey through, either gamification or design tweaks and stuff like that. And so that's where product comes in.
You've described yourself as a blockchain enthusiast, and blockchain is just taking the world by storm. How do you see blockchain affecting marketing, and what are the opportunities there?
I think what blockchain is doing now to marketing and fintech marketing in general is really showing the power of community building and community management. A lot of fintech companies have for a long time tried to build communities and be a little more transparent roadmaps and stuff like that, but I haven't seen really anyone crack that code, let's say. And I think it makes sense, in a sense that traditional fintech companies are invested in by VCs or by other companies, and so they need to answer to the board. They have commercial targets to make sure that they hit and things like that. Whether blockchain companies, a lot of them are funded by communities, right? So based on whether your community is really, really engaged, how much feedback they're giving you, and how much you're able as a company to react to that feedback and make changes to really show that you care about them. This can really make or break your blockchain project. And so blockchain marketing is really more community driven and community focused than any fintech marketing that I've seen.
The COVID pandemic obviously forced a lot of people online. What was the effect that it had on the fintech marketing industry, and do you see it continuing to rapidly develop as it did during the COVID pandemic?
Yeah, I think, the COVID pandemic obviously accelerated some trends, including everything that relates to digital payments, which, obvious consequence for people staying at home and everything. But what we've seen as well is that people were staying at home, so less opportunity for people to spend their money. And so savings levels really, really skyrocketed up until last summer, which is, a trend that a lot of fintechs can really, really take advantage of. In the way you communicate during COVID and after COVID, things have changed from a marketing standpoint as well. And one thing that's been really, really coming at the sort of forefront of a lot of people is sort of mental health. So people are a lot more conscious about mental health, and so for a company like BigPay, for instance, talking and thinking about the way people perceive their money in terms of mental health has been really, really important. Financial health, because money for a lot of people is not something that really brings them peace of mind. It's more like something that is stressful. Am I going to have enough money at the end of the month to pay for my bills, for my food, and all these things? Is what I'm currently earning allowing me to retire like earlier than I want to? Is it allowing me to save enough money to buy a house and stuff like that? So these are like anxious things for a lot of people. So it's very, very emotional. And so taking into account the effects of COVID on mental health, it really can have a big impact for fintech marketing to try and find ways to relate to how COVID and money in particular can affect your mental health.
If there was one thing that you could change about marketing, whether it's fintech marketing or digital marketing or any marketing, what would that one thing be?
People need to understand that, from a marketing standpoint, the goal is, yes, of course, to experiment, but the goal is mostly to be able to give a level of confidence and certainty around certain action. So being able to say, okay, if I, pull those levers, spend that amount of money on that network, if I send that amount of email to these people, these are the results that I can bring to the company. And so there's a real, science. It's really, really data driven. And it's not just subjective around, like, I like this word or I like this image or I like the combination of these two.
Is there a book, a blog, or a podcast that you are enjoying that you'd like to share with our viewers?
I mean, if I can shamelessly, plug something that I've been working on, is it's called Marketing Dragons, and so it's a publication on Medium where I talk to people that I admire, like marketing professionals that I admire that work in Southeast Asia. And so I ask them the same set of questions. There's usually like, what's one habit that you've developed in the last year, like the last couple of years that's really, really changed your life? What are the the books that have had the biggest influence on your professional life? When you feel stressed, what do you do? And so on. And so, reading all these answers and talking to all these people has really taught me a lot. It's really helped me reflect on a lot of the things that I've been doing myself and sort of refine, my thinking when I'm stressed.
Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. My guest today has been Jonathan Nyst. Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you again, Andy. It was a real pleasure talking to you.